Welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm Doc Jess, and as always, with me,
Sgt Q. I'm not used to doing it backwards. My brain freaked out.
She messed everything up. Like, all of us are like, wait, what?
Thanks for sharing.
I never shared that with you?
No.
Well, just add it to your hat of successes.
Then they get invited to another one and another one. And then it just became this slow fade into obscurity. And now they're compromising their own integrity, not just watching other people. It might not be fun for the viewers to watch, but I just feel like I'm clenching my butt cheeks.
Oh my gosh. You're such a mess.
Casey immediately is like, flagging that one.
Flag it. I smell a hook. All right. Welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I am Doc Jess, and with me, as always,
Sgt Q.
Nailed it. Hey, you guys, we're super excited about today's episode. Really fun stuff. And if you watched last week's, you know that there's some really exciting things we're going to talk about.
You want to break it down?
Yeah,
let's break it down.
Okay, I'll break it down. So we have a current event today everybody's been waiting for. Diddy. Diddy. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about P. Diddy and how that really transitions to another topic that we're going to talk about today, which is
lack of integrity.
Also, we're going to talk about a new advancement, and it's a study that came out that we'll go into more detail about. We're going to talk a little bit about our scripture for the day, and then I have some really great tools for you in your PTSD journey, or if a family or friend that you know has PTSD, because today's episode is 4 out of 4 for our journey with PTSD.
Yes, and the new advancement is really cool. 8 minutes a day. That's it. All you need is 8 minutes a day. And in a couple minutes, we're going to get into it and tell you all about it.
But first, we have a knowledge card.
Knowledge card. Yes. Yes. I nailed the one last week. I'm just going to say.
You got it about 50% right. All right. So our word teaser random knowledge question of the day is, what do lists of numbers such as stock prices, city populations, and the length of rivers have in common?
Stock prices, populations, and length of rivers? I was going to say that they have to correlate with one another. So if you look at, well, stock prices throws it out. Population is around waterways, and stock prices.
I'm just going to answer it because you're both way off. Understandably so. Both good guesses. About 30% of their numbers will begin with the digit 1. Only 5% will begin with the digit 9. Analysts can use these facts to help determine if there is voter fraud in an election. Surprisingly, data is not random when it comes to quantifying our world.
I feel triggered.
January 6th. Let's go back and look at those numbers. We should do that. Would you say it was 9, right? What? 9? It helps you find voter fraud? All right, that's what I'm going to do. Before next week, I'm going to look and see if there was voter fraud. January 6th. Truthers. All right, cool. Let's dive right into this current event of P. Diddy. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take the lead on this one because my guy here knows nothing about it, really. So it's something that I don't know too much about either, but I know that it's major trending and a lot of celebrities are getting exposed. So the latest I've heard is that people have come out with incriminating evidence. Is that the right word? Yes.
That these Diddy parties, people that would go to these parties with P. Diddy, there was lots of unethical and disgusting things going on sexually. That's what I'm going to leave it. And many times involving children. So big names have been thrown out there. And so P. Diddy went live last week exposing.
I didn't know this.
He went live
Himself?
exposing some of these names, and he made a threat. If these people don't call me back by tonight, I'm exposing more. It was pretty juicy.
Who was on the list?
All the same people on the Epstein list.
Oh, from Epstein. So no new information, just...
There's some new information coming about, but I mean, Justin Bieber came out with a new song about he lost himself at a Diddy party.
Oh, interesting. You know who else was kind of banging this drum was the comedian Cat Williams. Cat Williams has been saying this for probably like the last 8 years. He's been alluding to this about P. Diddy. Mm-hmm. And I follow some of his comedy. And so he's been talking about this, and people really just kind of brushed him aside like he was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been pretty honest. And
you know what else is crazy? You want to go deep? We talked about conspiracy theories a while ago, right? So here's a really good one. Okay. So you had this back in the 90s and 2000s, well, in the late 90s, you had this huge like thug rap battle going on between the West Coast and the East Coast rappers, right? Which you had East Coast Biggie Smalls, and the West Coast you had Tupac Shakur. And surprisingly, both of these guys are killed in gang warfare when it comes to their hip hop nation that they created, right? This feud between East Coast, West Coast rappers, right? They both died. Biggest names in hip hop, Biggie and Tupac, and they both are murdered. Well, who rises up out of the ashes?
P. Diddy.
Yeah. You want to go even deeper? Who's the guy who walked Biggie Smalls' mom and Tupac Shakur's mom onto stage at the music awards to kind of like end the beef?
P. Diddy. I thought you knew nothing about this.
I don't know nothing about what's happening now, but your boy knows something about hip hop. Okay? I grew up in the gangster rap era.
Gangster rap
back era. When could you imagine NWA coming out today and all these delicate sensitivities that are out here right now, and NWA hitting the streets today?
Yeah.
You know, or everybody knows Ice Cube now as this family-friendly doing these daddy fun films, but they don't know about Cop Killer.
Yeah.
you know, everybody thinks that Ice-T is just some detective on some NCIS show, not knowing that he did a song called Body Count. Okay. Talking about 6 a.m. 6 a.m. No.
Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. I know it all. And we
midnight,
think
chilling at AM, PM, cooling, drinking apple juice in Evil's BM. The sounds up loud to attract attention. Armor roll tires on the lower suspension. Naughty to steer with the Alpine deck was glowing, bumping Big Daddy. You know, definitely flowing.
Did you just bleep out your own word?
Yes, but he's going to put their actual bleep in there so it looks like I did it. Yeah, I know all about the gangster rap.
Again, ladies, sorry, he's taken.
Yes.
Okay. So talking about just quickly, P. Diddy and the unethical and disgusting things that were said to go on at these parties, and people lacking the courage and the boldness to address these things head on. That's what I'd like to segue into our real current event, Q.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah. So early in my business career, I lacked integrity. Not personal integrity, like I'm doing something bad, but by allowing people to operate in my sphere, in my company, and in my friendship group who were doing things that were not ethical. They were doing things that were immoral, cheating on their taxes, cheating on their wife, getting DUIs. And I allowed those people to be in my sphere, and I never said anything about it. That's where I lacked integrity. And I lacked courage to confront those things and hold them accountable. And if they didn't want to be held accountable, then to just move them out of my life. And I lacked that courage and integrity. And so since then, I've created 3 rules that I have for my life. Number 1 is to be honorable in all things. Number 2 is to surround myself with people of high integrity. And number 3, if anybody asks me to violate rule 1, I just refer to rule 2. Very, very simple. Very simple 3 rules that I live by. Do I get it right every time? No, but I really try. So I give you that backstory to tell you what happened now. I had this client who I was working with, helping them with some areas in their business. And I found out they were doing some unethical things. And then I had to make a decision. I had 3 options here. 1, I could say nothing and continue doing work with them. Number 2, I could just disassociate myself and end the contract, in the relationship, and just walk away. Or 3, I could confront them with what they were doing wrong and then end it. And so I had to wrestle with, what am I going to do? That wasn't really the hard part for me. I knew what I needed to do. I needed to confront them, and I needed to address the issue and tell them I wouldn't be working with them, and this is why. That was fine. That caused me a little bit of stress. But what caused me more stress was not acting out of my flesh. Because inside of me, I got to be honest, I wanted to stomp this dude out. Like, when I found out what was going on, I literally wanted to stomp this guy out. And it was very difficult for me to fight back those feelings. And I can kind of understand why. In the military, when there's a threat that comes in, you use overwhelming firepower to eliminate whatever that threat is. And so that is kind of become second nature for me. Then you start to add in the PTSD, and when I start to have that hypervigilance, that those emotions that start to rise up in me, my PTSD kicks in, and then I start struggling with anxiety, and things went downhill for me very quickly when it came to my mental health because of this issue that I had to address. And so we'll get into a little bit more of that as we go through these tools, but that's what I was dealing with. And so I had to do an assessment of myself, like, okay, wait a minute. I'm having these thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I need help. And so I looked around, like, who is in my vicinity that I can talk to about this that can help me? And luckily, Jess was here, and she was doing just some paperwork with some other clients that she was working on. And so she was just in the office doing like office hours. I said, hey, Jess, can I talk to you for a minute? I just need to pray about something. This is what I'm dealing with. Can you just walk through this with me? And you spent a good 10, 15 minutes talking to me. And then we prayed about it. And then from there, I went back into my conference room. I spent some time in scripture. The Lord gave me some great scriptures there that I could meditate on. And I was able to have this conversation now with this individual and not let my flesh come out, not let my emotions override my cognitive abilities in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And a disclaimer, we can keep this or leave it. I would caution people in the workplace or in the world from seeking validation or consult from somebody of the opposite sex in certain environments. Now, I work very closely with Aaron and his wife, and it's a very public place that we work in. So we were able to have a conversation in public, and we were able to pray in public with lots of witnesses. And so I like to be super careful about making sure that we're painting a picture of what's appropriate and what's not. And so
it's a good point.
My mind would go, well, why is he seeking? You know, if I'm his counselor, that's different, but I'm not. I'm a family friend, but I'm very close to him and his wife. And we keep those things on the forefront of our mind all the time. So perception is very important.
Yeah. Boundaries are really, really important. She's somebody that is a colleague. We work together in the mental health space. We have a lot of these types of conversations, usually just not personally entwined in something we're dealing with, but it could be, a client that I'm working with or a client that she's working with, or a situation that we see in the news that we could bring here to the mental health space for you guys. So we talk about these things, but in that moment I was like, okay, I need to talk to somebody. So before I even spoke to Jess, I had already reached out to my squad and I had talked to them the night before. I had talked to my wife about it the night before and that morning. But as I got closer and closer to that time of having to actually deal with this, I felt myself getting more and more anxious and more angry in the situation.
And you also had to play a role of protecting your wife to a certain extent as well, because some of the things that were challenging that he was going to have to challenge and approach are things that are incredibly triggering to his wife. And so there's an air of protection there as well that he couldn't disclose everything with his wife, or I would, always say, go talk to your wife first, So I'm getting on a tangent, but I'm glad that we brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that leads us right into our new advancement. So the new advancement, it was published by the New York Times 3-4 weeks ago, I think. It's pretty recent. And they said that it takes 8 minutes. 8 minutes to talk to a friend, and it will improve their mood. 8 minutes a day. That's all you need. You don't need to necessarily do it every day, but 8 minutes is all you need to make connection with a friend and improve their mood.
Yeah, that's really good. Actually, my husband and I visited a different church yesterday, and it was a family and friends service. And he's the pastor of this church has been a really good father-like figure to my husband since my husband's father passed away. It's his pastor of his dad's, right? And that was a lot of the sermon yesterday, because of the Family and Friends Day, was how important it is to not isolate. Yeah. How important those relationships are, how we're created for community. And that's one of the biggest trauma responses with PTSD is isolation. So it gives us that instant gratification of, oh, I'm isolating, I feel better in the moment. And so it's rewiring our frontal cortex to say, yes, this is how you handle anxiety and trauma, you isolate. When if you can see the big picture and see researches like this one to show the difference, is isolation is actually the opposite. It's not helpful. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's counterproductive.
Yes.
Actually, because if you're left alone with your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, you can really start to work yourself up, and you can justify just about anything to yourself. And I just think if I would have isolated away and not talked to anybody about this situation and then went and tried to handle it, I probably would have handled it very poorly, because I wasn't able to process through some of those thoughts, feelings, and emotions with my friends. I wasn't able to rationalize and be able to separate the emotion from the rational discussion that needed to happen. It would have gone really bad really, really quickly if I would have just isolated away. Or worse, if I would have done nothing.
Sure.
You know, that's what a lot of people do. And when we relate that back to P. Diddy, how many people around him or got invited to these parties the first time and saw some things that were a little hinky and were like, I don't know about this, but they never said anything. And so then they'd get invited to another one and another one. And then it just became this slow fade into obscurity. And now they're compromising their own integrity, not just watching other people do it.
Yeah. Well, and to piggyback on the isolation topic as well, is what's going to be really exciting is next week we're going to have a special guest specifically talking about how the church is the ark and how it is our safe place to be together and have these 8-minute conversations with people when you're doing life with people. And it's going to be really exciting. I just wanted to throw that in there.
You know what's wild? I just realized that every single person that I talked to, and I didn't talk to a bunch, but I talked to a couple people and you, Jess, about this situation I had to deal with. Every single one of them was a church member. Every single one.
Interesting.
Not one person was not actively in their church.
Yeah. And maybe not specifically your church, but an active church member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An active church member. Very devoted to their church. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But that's who I go to first. Why? Because I know we have a shared experience. I know we have a shared value system. And I know they're going to give me advice that's biblical, which is going to align with my values. Because if I speak to somebody who doesn't have the same value system as me, they're going to give me advice that is not going to align. And then it's going to cause me more anxiety.
Yeah. And fuel that flesh that you're trying to dumb down.
Yes. Yeah. I'm curious, Jess, and you don't have to go deep into it, but what were your initial thoughts when I was like, Jess, I got to come talk to you. Like, this is what I'm dealing with.
My initial thought went to your wife.
Yeah.
And wanting to protect her and what it could do for her. And my initial thought was wanting you to make sure you understood that this is a very hard thing that you are about to do. And I also wanted to stay around and stomp some heads in case you needed me. I was able to stay a few minutes and I just prayed. I prayed in here. I prayed in the car when I had to leave. And I prayed until I heard something from you that it was over, and they were seeking restitution and things like that. And so a lot of my thoughts were actually prayers and concern for your well-being and your wife's well-being.
Yeah, it was a very difficult thing to walk through. Something that it didn't seem very hard in the onset. I was like, oh yeah, I can just go deal with this. But the more I got into it, the more I was like, wait a minute, this is really deep in the weeds here. It's very easy to handle it in my flesh.
Yeah.
Very simple, but it's a lot harder to handle it as an honorable Christian man. It's something that I'm still learning how to do. Is how do I live out this Christian faith and be honorable in all things?
Right. And the specific situation was, it could have been, it was wrong and it needed to be addressed, but it could have been wrong and addressed and kept there, or it could have opened up a jar of so much more wrong. And that's what I was praying against, was I hope this is just at this beginning level and you can intercede and help convict another brother, or help be the words of the Lord so that the Lord will convict you, because we don't do the conviction. The Holy Spirit does. But I was really, a part of me was really nervous for what is this going to open up? And that's when my mind went, I hope that, I'm praying for your wife, for protection spiritually, mentally, emotionally over her. And knowing that this was just going to be a really challenging conversation to be had.
Yeah, it really was challenging. And part of the problem is I had never had to walk through something like this before. Yeah. So it was all new territory for me. So that was part of the problem, is the fear of the unknown. And when you have this difficult conversation with somebody, you don't know how they're going to react. They could be very positive and say, yep, you know what? You're correct. I need help. And can you point me in the right direction? Which is exactly what happened in this case.
Praise God.
But it could have been worse. They could have gotten angry. They could have got upset. They could have, said all kinds of things or stormed out. It could have gone a totally different direction.
Yeah.
And my body was prepared for that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I know how to handle that situation. If somebody wants to get hype and get in my face, like, I know how to handle that. And that's what my body was preparing for the whole time. But I had to make the conscious choice to dial that back. And when I was struggling with it, I had to reach out to friends to be able to help me with that.
Yeah. That's good. And I'm so glad that you've gotten to a point where you've learned that about yourself. Hey, feeling this, I need to reach out to somebody.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell you guys all the time. You have to know yourself. In my book that I wrote, I talk about a function check. When something's not feeling in you right, you got to check all these different functions and figure out why, and then go get some help. Yeah, it's kind of, when you receive a mental injury, like PTSD, a mental injury, you have to compare it to a physical injury. So if I had a broken arm, I'm not just going to go walk it off. I mean, I could, but it's never going to heal right. The better thing to do is go to one of my friends and say, hey, this arm's not supposed to bend that way. I think I broke this thing. And what are they going to do? They're going to say, yeah, man, that looks broken. Let's get you to a professional who's going to do an assessment, give me some medication in the short term, and then create a treatment plan for me so I can heal. Then I go back and tell my friends, hey, got this injury. I need some space and grace so I can heal. Well, we can do the same thing with a mental injury. Mm-hmm. When we receive trauma, we can recognize it, like something's not right. We've experienced this trauma. We're feeling out of sorts. Maybe we're having nightmares, anxiety. Maybe we're hypervigilant, whatever that looks like. And then we tell somebody and they say, yeah, man, that sounds like you're struggling with some post-traumatic stress. Get you to the professional. They can do an assessment, maybe give you some medication in the short term, but then they're going to give you a treatment plan. Then you get to go home, tell your friends and family, hey, I'm trying to heal from this trauma. I'm going to need a little extra support. They're going to give that to you, and they're going to give you space and grace so you can heal.
If they're good friends and supportive friends.
Yes. And the other thing is, if you have that broken leg or broken arm, like I'm nursing an injury that I had in my knee from when I was a paratrooper. Mm-hmm. And so when I go run and when I go hike, I have to put extra support there. I have to wear a brace. And I know that after I have an event, like I run or I go hike, that I'm going to need to ice it down. I'm going to need to stretch it out. And it's going to be a little sore and swollen for the next couple of days. I know that. So it's the same thing when I had to walk through this PTS moment, because I know, because of my history, my post-traumatic stress, I'm going to need a little extra support. So I reached out to friends. I also know that I'm going to need a little extra time to heal from that experience. I can't just go right back into it. That day, I didn't get any work done. And then this weekend on Friday and Saturday, my wife and I really just took Friday and Saturday off. We went to the fair, we hung out. I needed a little bit of extra time to heal.
Yeah, that's good. And that's all things that you learn in counseling is these tools that we're going to share with you towards the end of this episode of ways to help realign your nervous system in an intentional way.
50% of Americans say that they or a loved one have suffered from mental health crisis. Together, we can change all that. Introducing Q Actual, a revolutionary new peer-to-peer based mobile application. Personalized to fit your lifestyle, with pinpoint GPS location in times of emergency. Connecting you to your care provider. With Q Actual, we will move you forward. Download Q Actual now and visit qactual.com.
Yeah, and so let's get into our scriptures, Jess, because you have some and I have some.
And it says, I pray that God, the source of hope, will fill you completely with joy and peace because you trust in him. Then you will overflow with confident hope through the power of the Holy Spirit. I love that scripture because a lot of PTSD stems from hopelessness.
Yes.
Feeling like you're never going to get better. You're never going to be normal. It was very centered around hopelessness. And I have to constantly remind myself that with the power of the Holy Spirit and hope in Jesus Christ in my eternity, it takes me from hyper-focusing this tunnel vision to the moment that I'm feeling bad to hope for the future. And what is there's a quote or a research study that once you take hope out of the equation, do you know what I'm talking about?
I know the one by Johns Hopkins University that shows that hope is the number one catalyst for survival.
That's it. Yeah. So that's why there's so much suicide, because when you take hope out, your catalyst for survival goes away and you don't care about surviving anymore. It's also interesting because there was a study, a brain study about a certain part of your brain that shows it grows
when the anticular cortex.
When you do hard things. And it showed the biggest in military members and professional athletes because they constantly have to do things they don't want to do. And so it's like the equivalent of like, there's somebody who absolutely detests an ice bath, which would be me. I hate them. I hate every second of them. I try to talk myself out of doing it every time my calendar says, oh, it's time for your ice bath. That is growing that part of my brain. Other people, they get a thrill out of it. It's still a hard thing, but if you get a thrill out of doing it, it's not growing that part of your brain as much. And so they brought all of that study together to show that the people with that bigger part of their brain have a stronger will to live, which was so interesting to me. And so, I mean, how many people with PTSD have had to do really hard things that they didn't want to do? So that part of their brain should be bigger, but losing that hope renders it useless. So that's an interesting correlation. What are your scriptures, Q?
So my scriptures are Proverbs 10:4 through 14. And there are a bunch of one-liners basically of wisdom literally talking about how the words of the wise will make you wealthy. And they're not necessarily talking about wealth as far as like monetary. And then how the lips of a fool deserve a beating, right? Like you're going to get the stick. Yeah.
Verse 13 says, wise words come from the lips of people with understanding, but those lacking sense will be beaten with a rod.
Right. And
what was your translation?
I said something like that. Their lips deserve a beating.
Something like that. Yeah.
So there's 4 through 14. There's a bunch of these really great scriptures that help just give me the confidence that I was doing the right thing, bringing this to light, and hopefully my brother would receive it and repent and make things right in his life. And so it was a really good, not even a motivator, but more of just brought me peace, because after we spoke, I went in and I just started to read scripture. And that's the first page that I have a really awesome Bible. It's huge, and it's actually illustrated by Salvador Dali. So if you don't know who Salvador Dali is, very famous artist. He drew the two hands that are drawing themselves. He also does the elephants and the melting clocks. Like, that's Salvador Dali. There's a version of the Bible that he illustrated, which is super cool. It's one of the coolest Bibles that I own. And so I just love that thing. And so I opened it. It's not a practical Bible to read every day. It's massive, but it's in my conference room. I opened it up and I just started reading, and those were the Proverbs. It's the wisdom of Solomon. And that's where I started to glean this knowledge from. And it just gave me confidence.
I did have a question for you. One of the things that we talked about doing was putting your headphones on and doing some binaural beats. Were you able to do that day?
I was not, because my headphones were not charged.
Okay.
So yeah, I wasn't able to do that.
I think I offered you mine, but.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, I got mine.
Yeah.
I would be interested in one of those really heightened states to see how that, because you had a little bit of a heightened state when we did it in here.
Yeah.
And it helped. So I wonder, I was kind of curious to see if it helped you in that moment too.
I'm sure it would have. I just went right to the Bible.
Yeah. Which is better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So amazing. Well, are you ready to jump into some of these tools?
Yeah. Don't make me cry this time.
I will try not to.
Okay. All right. Let's get into our tool for our toolbox.
So I got two today because they're both really, really good. And we're on episode 4 of 4 for PTSD. And I want to share both of them with you. So
okay.
Give me a little grace. So the first one I want to talk about is called, these are both part of DBT, Dialectical Behavior Therapy, and it's part of cognitive therapy. Okay. The first one we're going to call TIPP skill. This is the TIPP skills and military. So we love acronyms. Okay. TIPP stands for temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and paired muscle relaxation. So if we think of temperature, it says when mammals dive into a body of water, it brings the body back to a state of calm. In practicing this technique, a person tips their head into a bowl of water to mimic this experience. However, this skill is not always feasible in all areas of life. The good news is any cooling method is helpful in taking us out of the sympathetic state distress puts us in. A few techniques to try are running one's hands under cold water, standing in front of a fan or AC, patting cool water on your face or neck, or rubbing ice cubes on your face or neck, and holding them in your hands.
So yeah, so when you talk about getting into a body of cool water, or like ice plunge, body of cool water, or splashing the ice, the ice water on your face, that it creates the dive technique. Or not dive technique, the dive response in the body, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah. Have I told you my story about my cold plunge okay. I got to share this with you.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. So Q had started getting me into this cold plunge because that's what he does. He makes everybody do all the things that has made him successful. And that's just who he is. So I started doing this cold plunge, and I got just a cheap, blow up one where I just sit in it and hate life. Right. Okay. So I used to have what I call PTSD attacks a couple times a month. And we talked a few episodes about my 23 jobs in 23 years. And so these PTSD attacks had a big impact on my life. And so a PTSD attack for me would look like this. I get triggered really bad, maybe a firework or a backfire in a car. I'm in a bunch of stress, whatever. And then I cannot self-regulate. And so I have to go home, take some kind of benzo, like a Valium or an Ativan. And then I'm out for 24 to 48 hours because that medication is so strong for me that I'm like a zombie. And so it takes me a couple days to recover from a PTSD attack like that. And so sometimes I would have to call out sick from work for 2 or 3 days. And it just was like that panic attack hangover that we've talked about before. Anyways, it was debilitating. And so I have a 15-year-old and an 8-year-old. And for some reason this night, the topic of suicide came up. And my girls started asking me about the people that I knew that had committed suicide. And I know several people from the military and veterans that have committed suicide. And this triggered that response in me, that reaction in me. And I went to bed I barely was able to sleep that night. I was tossing and turning. I was having major night terrors. It was horrific for me. And I was like, told my husband, this is I'm probably going to have to call my clients today. I'm not going to be able to come in. And then I thought, I'm going to try this cold plunge. It wasn't my day to do the cold plunge. So I was like, I'm going to try it. I did the cold plunge for 4 minutes. I got out and all of my symptoms were gone, 100%. And I said, I'm in. I hate this so much, but I'm in. If I can avoid that 3 days of intense hangover feeling and just the horrors of those PTSD attacks, I'll sit in a cold bath for 4 minutes. So that's one reason I love the TIPP skills, because I'm an advocate for just jump in the whole stinking lake if you need to.
Yeah, it activates that dive response. That's a really cool story, Jess. Thanks for sharing that.
I never shared that with you?
No.
Well, just add it to your hat of successes. All right, so then we're going to go into the intense exercise. That's the I, okay? So engage in an exercise that matches your distress level at the moment. This could be dancing, running in place, fast walking, sprinting down the hallway, doing jumping jacks, or calisthenics, such as push-ups or sit-ups. This hopes to release any pent-up energy that you're holding. I should do that.
I don't like that one. Well, no, and here's why. Because my will is stronger than my body. And so I will like my knee, I will damage myself.
Oh, got it. Okay. So yeah, good disclaimer. Know yourself.
Yep.
So if you're super angry and you know you're going to work out super hard and injure yourself, don't do that. Okay. The first P, because TIPP skills are TIPP, is placed breathing. So placed breathing is an intentional pacing your breath, which calms the sympathetic nervous system down and allows us to begin thinking in a calmer and more logical manner. A few breathing techniques to try are box breathing, and that was created by a Navy SEAL. Mm-hmm. Diaphragmatic breathing, which is like breathing techniques. You can find YouTubes to get lots of oxygen in your diaphragm in your full lungs. And studies and research show that it is an actual, what's your big doctor word? Neurological biofeedback. Yes. And then there's a couple other breathing techniques, but those have been proven to really help.
I like the Wim Hof breathing. And he's the guy who's really...
The cold plunge breathing guy?
I love doing his. It's very, very simple. I really like that one.
Yeah. Good. And a caveat like a little side note for if you're going to try ice plunges or cold plunges is get a good YouTube video that walks you through the breathing your first couple times you try it. Because if you try to go in it cold turkey, you'll end up like our friend. We won't name names, but he couldn't even be in there for a minute. He jumped out, said, I'll never do it again. It's because he wasn't prepared. And so I say, be prepared, have a 3 to 4 minute video that is literally walking through your breath. If you can have somebody walk you through your breath work, you're going to be golden. Okay. The second P is paired muscle relaxation. You can practice paired muscle relaxation, PMR, in a few different ways. If you're in a private enough space, you can scan your whole body and tense each muscle group at a time, breathing in and tensing for 5 seconds and then releasing. After scanning your whole body, you can tense all muscle groups together while breathing in from your face to your toes for 5 seconds and release. There's also some great mindfulness if you YouTube paired muscle relaxation. Maybe I can add one to this episode that I would recommend. But this can also be a good tool for you guys to have, is that paired muscle relaxation.
I've never learned that technique before.
You've never done paired muscle relaxation?
No.
We're going to have to do that one day.
Okay, we'll do it one day.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. And
it might not be fun for the viewers to watch, but
no, it'll...
I'll just be like, I'm clenching my butt cheeks.
Oh my gosh. You're such a mess.
Casey immediately is like, flagging that one.
Flag it. I smell a hook. All right. So
the clenched cheeks.
Yeah. So that's the TIPP skills. Do we have time, Casey, for me to go into the accepts acronym?
Well, we're at about 40 minutes now.
Okay. I am just going to touch on it really quickly, you guys. The accepts is another acronym, and the acronym stands for activities. So do an activity that requires thought and concentration. C is contributing. Do something. You get healing through service. Serve someone. Do something kind for somebody else. Comparisons. Put your situation in perspective by comparing it to something more painful or distressing. I do that all the time. And that really helps me have a gratitude mindset. Emotions, do something to create a new emotion that will compete with your distressing emotion. So if you're sad, watch a happy movie. If you're anxious, practice deep breathing. If you're angry, go for a walk. Emotions. Oh, I just did emotions. Pushing away. Avoid a painful situation or block it from your mind using techniques such as imagery. So this is not advocating for isolation or pulling away in that sense by avoidance, but it's more so like try to delay harmful urges for an hour. So pushing away the want to have a cocktail,
right,
or
right,
smoke a cigarette,
right,
or whatever that is. So thoughts is the T, and this is use a mental strategy or an activity to shift your thoughts to something neutral. So starting with the letter A, name objects around you that start with each letter of the alphabet, or count a specific object around you, bricks or trees. Sing a song out loud or recite it in your head. Sensation is the S. Find a safe physical sensation to distract you from distressing emotions, like hold an ice cube in your hand, eat something sour or spicy.
Hashtag Sgt Q's Mighty Minty
Brain Bangers.
Hashtag Sgt Q Super Sour Mighty Minty Brain Bangers.
Yes, that's part of accepts.
It is.
It's a very, very popular DBT skill that counselors use. So, and then another sensation would be take a cold shower. So those are some very good tools for you guys today. And you guys remember to like and subscribe our videos. It really helps us. Make sure that you're asking questions and commenting to let us know what you like, what you don't like. And remember that we are always here to help educate, empower, and encourage you to share these things with your friends
and educate
and empower you with the truth.
For the Mental Health Janitors, I'm Sgt Q.
And I'm Doc Jess, and we're out.
Casey, oh my God.
Hi guys, Doc Jess here from the Mental Health Janitors, and I wanted to sneak in here to let you guys know about a really exciting opportunity that Sgt Q is going to be sharing with us. He has an award-winning signature talk that he's going to be holding on Friday, May 10th at 6:30 at Faith and Victory Church. This is an incredible opportunity to get some free mental health training from one of the best. I know I'm going to be there, and I just want to invite all of you guys to be there. Make sure you guys sign up, and the link of how to sign up will be in this video. Thanks so much, you guys. Hope to see you there.